What is happening, everyone? The football therapist here. Time to bring you some Dynasty content. Going to be putting out my Superflex rankings. Let's hit that intro. So guys, always remember, just like with my other 2021 rankings, tier breaks are important to me. They distinguish the eliteness of a prospect, the security of a prospect, and where I'm willing to look at a different position. For the rookie rankings, it's no different. It's just I'm willing to draft a player at a certain spot based on those tiers. And again, it's very early. The NFL draft hasn't even happened, so I will be changing this. But someone I'm not changing is Trevor Lawrence. He's the #1 overall Dynasty rookie pick for me in Superflex drafts. The guy's been elite for 3 years. He has an elite arm, very mobile, very accurate. We know what he can do on the field. He's been doing it since a high schooler. He's just been above and beyond the competition. And he's a lot safer than the rest of these quarterbacks. There's no doubt in my mind that Trevor Lawrence is the #1 overall pick in Superflex drafts. So let's look at some of my tier 2 prospects. These are guys that I am super high on. Starting with Justin Fields. This is a player that is kind of overlooked in my opinion, in the sense that people try to nitpick his flaws and they don't really understand how good of a dynasty quarterback he could be if he lands in the right situation. He has a very accurate arm. He has a very strong arm. He showed an ability to make throws when he needed to. He did miss some, and he does stay on his first read more times than I would like to see. That often causes him to make a bad throw at times, throw an interception, but he possesses all the characteristics of an elite quarterback in the making. He needs a little time to develop those reads. Hopefully he could improve his progressions. But the one thing I like about Justin Fields for the Dynasty format and for fantasy football in general is his elite rushing upside. This is a guy that is a dual threat quarterback, but he's a better passer than some of the dual threat quarterbacks we've seen in the past. So to me, he's the complete package, and he should be taken around picks 2 to 4 in any league, and he can really blossom into a top 5 to 10 fantasy quarterback because of that elevated floor with his rushing upside. Now, Jamar Chase and Najee Harris, these are two players who are elite prospects at their respective positions. Either guy could be made an argument for to be drafted at #2 depending on your team needs. Jamar Chase, he's an alpha. He broke out as a true sophomore. He had a lot of weapons on that team, and he was the alpha in that LSU team. He has terrific body control, is an elite route runner, and he, to me, is going to be a star at the next level. His analytics are terrific. He has a really good body mass index for his height. I think he's going to be a star and a top 10 wide receiver within 2 years. Najee Harris, the guy's a bell cow back at the running back position. He's going to be a 3-down back. He has very good vision, very good between the tackles, and he's actually a better pass catcher than I think we lead on. At Alabama, he was used a good amount in the passing game, but it was mostly swing passes. I think that he could have an ability to really be a 3-down back in the NFL if he improves his pass blocking just a little bit. But again, most running backs out of college needs to improve that pass blocking ability. But overall, these are the 3 guys that you want to be targeting in those picks 2 to 4 depending on your team needs, and all of them to me will be very good to elite level players at the next level. So guys, let's look at tier 3, which we're going to be starting off with 2 quarterbacks. This is a super flex tier ranking. So again, quarterbacks are going to be valued a little bit more than these other players behind them. And both Trey Lance and Zach Wilson have similar upside and similar concerns in my opinion. Zach Wilson is definitely more safer to me, but Trey Lance has immense upside due to his dual threat ability. I mean, he had over 1,000 yards 2 years ago on the ground. He's very accurate. He has a very strong arm. The issue with Trey Lance is, has he played enough football to warrant a high draft pick? I mean, I see some people fading him a little bit in the Dynasty community, and while he has all the traits of an elite quarterback in the making, I understand the concerns that the sample size is very minimal. He's a lot riskier than these other quarterbacks, but again, I like his upside and I like him as a player, so if he gets in the right situation, he definitely could be a really good Dynasty asset in the Superflex community. Now, Zach Wilson is a little bit safer. He has a very accurate arm. He's really good throwing it on the run. To me, he's going to have that high draft capital, and he's going to be a starter from day one, depending on where he lands. My concern with Wilson is he doesn't have that high of a rushing upside that you would like to see with fantasy quarterbacks nowadays, and he's not as safe to me as a prospect as Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. He has a little bit of a risk coming out of BYU, but I still think he could be a really good quarterback at the next level. We will see where he lands in the draft, and we will reassess him as the offseason goes on. Now, Travis Etienne is a guy who I really liked over his 4-year career at Clemson. He had a really early breakout age at 19, and while breakout age isn't necessarily important to running backs in the fantasy community, I think it's important to note that seeing a guy perform at that high of a level is something that we should consider as an elite level trait for a running back prospect. Now, what Etienne is good at is he's very explosive, he's very shifty, he's a really good pass catcher. He's going to be a guy who, if you get him in the right scheme, he'll thrive. He's an Alvin Kamara type runner to me, but he's not as safe as Najee Harris. He's not going to be an every down running back, in my opinion, in the wrong system. So scheme is going to really depend where I rank him going into 2021, if he climbs a little bit or falls. Now, Rashad Bateman, I did a whole video on him. Elite breakout age, elite analytics, a really good route runner. He's the overall all package to me. I think I'm going to be targeting him in most of my drafts. If you haven't done so already, watch the video right up here. I'll put a link to it. Now, Kyle Pitts, there's not much to say about Kyle Pitts. He's an elite prospect, but he's at a position where historically tight ends have not produced in fantasy football during their first few years. It's kind of a position where they need to grow in the NFL system and in the NFL team that they're on. So that's my thing with Kyle Pitts, is while he is an elite level prospect, there's always that concern that he starts out slow as a fantasy football player. One thing I will add though is, depending on your league type, if it's a tight end premium, he gets a massive boost. I do think he could be a top 5 to 10 tight end in 2 to 3 years, but for now I'm going to be leaning for those quarterbacks, running backs, and elite wide receivers before I get to. So when looking at tier 4, I want to begin by saying I know I'm going to get backlash for this. I don't hate these players. I just like other guys a little bit more. I think that there are some flaws in the analytical profiles of both Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle compared to a Rashad Bateman. And when looking at the tape, all three of these guys exhibit elite traits, but when trying to focus on who I would rather draft, who would I rank higher, I do have to weigh a little bit of analytics into my decision making, as well as some subjective bias when viewing these players, because it's not a perfect science. We look at these players, we may like player A for one reason over another. Some other guy may look at that reason and be like, it doesn't matter, but every ranking is different. So for Devonta Smith, it's really his BMI. I know looking at him on the field, he has elite hands, good body control. He's a smaller wide receiver though. I don't know if he could become an alpha based on the historical hit rates of these wide receivers with low body mass index. You look at players with 25 or less BMI, it's about 15%. 24 or less, it's about 12.5%. And these are guys taken in rounds 1 to 3. Now, of course, the analytics isn't everything. I'm not fading him completely. I just like some of these other players a little bit more than Devonta Smith because of that BMI reason. Now for Jalen Waddle, he has elite speed. He has a really good route tree. He needs to refine his route running a little bit more. But he didn't really break out in college. He didn't have a true breakout year. So that's another reason why I have him a little bit lower than a Rashad Bateman, than a Jamar Chase, than some of these other players, because he didn't have a true breakout season based on the analytics. Now, another guy last season who didn't have that was Henry Ruggs. I'm not saying he's going to be a Henry Ruggs type player, but the concern is there based on that metric, so I have him a little bit lower. Lastly in this tier, Javonte Williams. I don't hate Javonte Williams. I think he's being a little bit overvalued by the Dynasty community. I've seen some guys put him as high as overall player 4 in Superflex mock drafts, taking him over some of these other quarterbacks and some of these other high profile players. He is really good between the tackles. He has a really good ability to break tackles, but I'm concerned about the system at UNC. Just like with Kenny Gainwell, who kind of just missed his top 12, how much of that system really impacted his play? We saw Michael Carter produce in the same system. He does have some really good metrics in terms of his BMI, his height and weight. Also, his college dominator was pretty solid, but I am a little bit concerned how much of that UNC offense played a role in his success, and that's why I'll be waiting on him specifically draft day to see where the draft capital lies and then reassess when the time comes. Let me know who is too high, who is too low, and as always, thank you